All right, sorry. There's like a cricket.
Did Evan just like crickets?
Did you not like what I was saying, Evan? The computer didn't like what I was saying.
I didn't touch it.
So welcome, Russ.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Oh, wait, other way around. Thanks for having me.
All right, Russ. So there's 3 dimensions of Russ that I want to get into today. And
Going deep.
we're not going to get into all of them right away. We'll kind of work through them. Just want to give you some heads up. But I've known you for a while, and there are 3 things that I want to ask you about, 3 categories, and I have some sub-questions related to it. So first, I want to do a postmortem on Ring Cam.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I can't. I love that.
Good. We'll talk a little bit about that. Then I want to talk about your perspective shift as an entrepreneur since becoming a father.
Okay.
And then finally, I'll let you talk about what you're working on right now with your podcast. So
My plug. Great. Love it. Okay.
get to that at the end. This episode is sponsored by City Innovations. City Innovations is a venture studio located in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but they serve people all over the world. If you've got an idea that you want to bring to market and you're not sure if you're building the right thing or if you are selling to the right people, consider talking to City Innovations. They'll help you validate that idea and make sure you're doing the right thing. Find City Innovations at cityinnovations.com or search City Innovations anywhere on socials. So leading off, I want to do a little bit of a postmortem about Ring Cam. If you could, I don't want to steal your thunder. If you could just give the 15-second description of what Ring Cam was.
Yes, it is not the Ring doorbell camera. It's not the Ring Amazon thing, but it's an engagement ring box with a camera inside of it where you put an engagement ring and record your proposal. Simply that.
And you started that when you were 22?
22. Yeah.
And how long did you run that for?
4 years. Felt like 10. But yeah, from till 26, because that's when health insurance really kicked in. So had to pay for it, or that I just needed to get all of us. We had 4 dudes on there, like as part of the company. And once we hit 26, we were just picking off like flies. We're like, gotta get a job, gotta get my health insurance. So that's what happened.
What do you think you would have done differently if you were to build Ring Cam today? And I don't mean so much tactically, like I would have done social media marketing differently. I mean, fundamentally with the business, what do you think like the 22-year-old Russ messed up on?
Yeah. Oh, I have thought about this so much. So I think looking back, it was not prioritizing the right stuff. So we made a lot of success at the e-commerce level. We rode this media wave, right? And so I at least tried to lean into it. Jewelers started talking to us, and that was kind of where we went, is either e-commerce or jewelers. And I think if we had figured out the jewelry store model, selling to them better, would have loved to capitalize on that and figure out a better strategy that was year over year. We learned a ton about working in retail and trying to empower like the sales associates to actually sell the product is a lot harder than selling to the main man who just passes it down their associates and they're like, yeah, sell this like with all the other jewelry. So we learned a little bit about that, and it was hard to iterate with the jewelry stores, keep a relationship with them. So like looking back, it would have been much more targeted towards manufacturing, improving that. That was very hard part of this, was just manufacturing this. We did it all in-house. 3D printers were just coming out. We customized everything with laser engraving. But I think it would have been improving our jewelry store sales strategy and improving our marketing, our manufacturing a lot more.
Interesting.
Yeah, if I were to have done anything, I would have gotten rid of and stopped all focus on e-commerce almost. We made a decent amount of money on there, but it wasn't sustainable. And it was really hard and expensive to reach out to guys that were proposing. It's really like, if you think about it, it's kind of like a surprise party. It's like trying to market a surprise party company. It's super secret. Nobody's supposed to know about it. Like, how do you market to people that are about to propose? It's like a really expensive ad spend and all that. So like, could have spent that in much better ways.
Yeah. So it seems like it's easy to see that in hindsight, but what do you think you overlooked at the time?
Oh, overlooked.
Were there signals there? Were you just not listening to the signals? Were you headstrong? Did you have some vision in your head and you just kept forcing it forward? What do you think happened?
Let me think about that. There were definitely signals. I guess I'm looking back after having worked in like the real world, we'll say, getting a real job. I've realized that the signals were definitely in the jewelry store market. It was just right in our face, talking to jewelers. That was the way to go. I got really distracted with the whole e-commerce thing, I'd say. Getting we did everything. We did organic blog posts, referrals. That was kind of what I was focused on, was trying to build that side up. And it would have been in our best interest to have sold, just grow that, because that's where they go. Everybody's buying an engagement ring at the jewelry store, and we were trying to target them while they were online, and it's just really difficult. And there was a couple, I guess some of those other signals, let me think about that. There was digital. So what I realized too in the jewelry industry is they had a big issue with digital marketing. They were getting eaten up by Blue Nile, these other online e-commerce shops, and we could have probably adopted some sort of social media package with every ring box and ring cam video, which we had just started doing right at the end of ring cam. We really got our feet underneath us after burning, it was 4 years of just trudging through this. And then I feel like right at the end, we just hit our stride and we just were like, we got to go. It's too much. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you learned that lesson about prioritization. How is that carried forward into other projects in the future that you've worked on? So when does this ghost of ring cam's past pop up in your head and you're like, oh, I learned that before, not going to do that again? Like, how is that? What kind of impact does that make day to day for you?
Oh yeah. Every once in a while I'll find myself in a situation at my current role and I'm like, wow, I actually have some pretty decent sales experience, or I know how to read Google Analytics in a way that makes sense. And you're hiring some people that are very intelligent in this space, but sometimes when you learn this stuff on the streets and you kind of have to I got to pay my bills. I got to figure out Google Analytics or figure out how to make a sales call that's going to sell, or else we're not going to make rent. It was that hard. So there's something about that desperation experience that really rears its head. And it's like, wow, I guess I do have a lot more experience than I originally thought about this. So yeah, one of our salespeople was talking to me about their sales pitch. And I'm like, oh, we got to connect on an emotional level. That seems to be the case. Instead of trying to puff yourself up as this expert, people don't like that. I mean, we tried to do that. We were the young digital marketing people, got this cutting edge idea, and that didn't resonate as well as what are your problems? We solve digital marketing issues was really our focus for them. So, I think that's it. There's probably some other scenarios, but yeah.
What advice could you generalize for, a 22-year-old starting a company like that with 3 other dudes, as you said?
Yeah.
What pitfalls could they avoid?
I really appreciate sales structures, grinding at sales. How do you grind the sales channels? Thinking about channels, thinking about how going into Amazon and Walmart and all these other online retailers will just make you money. It's just by existing on these platforms, sometimes you just win. If you're a 22-year-old listening to this podcast, I would say find people that have experience, real experience. We got baited by a couple consultants that were recommended to us, but somebody that's a straight hustler. I don't know how else to describe it, but that's the way to go. It's, figuring out your sales grind and knowing the conversions of you make 100 calls, you get 1 sale, let's say, right? And appreciate that grind. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. Just the sales part is so important. And I think a lot of at least us, we got lucky by having sales come to us, and that spoiled us a little bit. So when we had to start doing sales, it got really hard because we got lucky in the beginning.
Yeah. You said it's important just to work with the people who really know what they're doing. How would you sniff out a consultant who actually knows what they're doing versus someone who's an imposter? Because I agree that's definitely a problem or a challenge. People start a company and they look around the room, they look in their family, their friend network, and they take the best person who's available right now. But like even a year from now, they shouldn't be the best person in your network, right? You have to give yourself time to kind of find the right people. So what do you do today to sniff out the real authorities from the imposters?
Check asking more of what they actually did and showing their work. Like old school days of like doing those proofs, I'm like, I need like social proof that you took something and made it something. And especially there are a lot of people out there that work in an already existing created environment and brought metrics up from 10% to 13%, which was huge in a corporation. And I don't deny that that's true and you'd be effective. But when you're at startup mode, you can't just be waiting on some initiative that comes from the founder. You have like the person that you find for a consultant needs to have that grind that they've been through. And you have to really ask them, how did you give me a project that you brought from 0 to 1? That's the biggest learning. But I will say I've been learning that sometimes the best person in your network is better than what you can find, right? So it's a little bit of make sure you talk to a lot of people, because when you're 22, you think you just coming out of like the most social environment of your life, right? And your best friends are like the smartest people you know. So it's kind of hard to like gauge that. And there are probably much more like older experienced people that you need to bring on your team. That's at least what I would have done too, is finding the people that are like, I want to do this startup with you, and I have the experience and I know how to do something from 0 to 1. Like those 3 boxes would be, man, I wish I could tell myself that from back in the day. So yeah.
I laugh when I think about the people who were around me when I did my first startup, and I thought they were like the authorities. And yeah, you really do. I think that's important to call out the 0 to 1 experience too. It's very different taking something that exists and it's incremental changes versus, there's nothing there. You're building up a whole brand strategy, marketing strategy, all that stuff from 0. Now building off of that, shifting, let's move forward a decade. So now you're an older, wiser man. You're a father. How has that impacted your perspective on entrepreneurship, being a founder, and what that means?
Yeah. So that's right. So like there's a lot of, I tried to do startups right after RingCam, and RingCam like made money afterwards. We kind of just packaged it up, put it in the cloud. Is what we joked about, because we had a fulfillment and all that stuff like resolved, right? Everything was automated. And I tried to join startups that would pay my bills slowly over time, because I got married right after RingCam had started, like finished. And so I'd say as a father, I'm looking for stability. Like that's the biggest thing. When you're 22, you can kind of just live off of a couple $100, But when you have a kid, you need a lot more resources in order to sustain yourself. So I found myself joining startups or looking at startups that will allow me to learn as much as I can. And I think that's what I'm in this season of, is learning from my mistakes that I did at RingCam. So I had like experienced that, learned that there's just stuff that you could not possibly know at 22 or 26 without having experience. And now I'm like learning, you got to really learn how to work with some people. And by that, I mean like if you're a startup guy, you're probably like an A-type personality. And when you're in a room with a bunch of A-type personalities, knowing how to navigate that is a challenge in itself. And I think that's something that I'm trying to figure out is I've joined a startup. It's funded now, which was awesome. And knowing how they operate is very different than how I feel like a lot of startups that I've at least encountered operate. They're just trying to make the cheapest decisions as quickly as they can, grinding through stuff. And man, I think if I were to, those are some of the things. Stability in finances is what I've learned.
Yeah.
So
stability, how do you reconcile stability with startups? Because most people would put those as diametrically opposed. You cannot have stability and a startup. A startup is risky. It's transient. It's, you're taking a chance if you do a startup. So
yeah.
Now I think I share a perspective with you that there's different types of startups, and some are more stable, and betting on yourself is maybe not that risky. But I'm curious how you approach stability with startups and how you define that, what you're looking for if you're joining a startup or working with them. Oh,
okay. I think there's two dimensions, right? It's not really the finances. It is, but it isn't, it's a mental game too, that you're playing constantly. Like, can I take a pay cut, right? In order so that I can get home and it's like a little bit of balancing the rest and the work. And so if I come home and I need to figure out how to not eat so much or cut my meals to be cheaper every time, or I'm not going to go hang out with friends, it's going to drain on me. Right. But yeah, I think the stability balance, right? Balancing my stability, it doesn't really go away. I think everybody's kind of always balancing their stability, especially when you're a startup, because you're learning fast and you're trying to figure out where your role is supposed to be. I think me personally, if I were to ever do a startup again that was to be with stability, I'd have to build up my network way ahead of time. I think there's a lot of prep work you can do and then get funding. I'd say there's a balance. I've been under the bootstrap mindset for a long time. I think bootstrapping works to an extent, but not when you commit go all in and commit everything you have to this startup. When you have a kid at home or all that, there are ways to do that, right? But a lot of the people that are successful, I found, saved up a lot of money and are in a low risk situation. A lot of the stories that you hear about people selling their car and all these things to make their startup happen on these other podcasts, those are the 1 in a million that get super lucky and they de-risk that loss, right? And I think that's what I think it's a little misinformation out there to say that you have to do those things in order to have a successful startup or be a part of something like that. So yeah, I think it's something like that.
My perspective, stability is not just the financial stability. I agree with you there. I think the financial stability, the capital in the company, the salary you can take is all just a signal of good stewardship and governance in that startup and good leadership. And that's what I look for more so if I'm going to join a startup, is who's leading it and have they done it before? Joining first-time founders, it's very stressful.
Totally.
Joining a second-time founder, totally different. It's a very different experience. So that's something that I look for. Have they been there before?
Could not agree more, man. I think, you've hit something. There's experience that you got to find in the next startup. So
I'm curious if you've noticed this too. I imagine RingCam was pretty chaotic and stressful for you. Every day you're just trying to figure things out. And now you've worked with some other startups. Have you found that there's a calm way to build a startup and then there's a chaotic way to build a startup?
Yes. And I think the chaos at RingCam was very much a little bit of us not knowing how to prioritize, right? So I think if we had that ruthless prioritization of we need to fix 2 things this quarter, or like quarterly time blocking, where in startup mode, it was why it was chaotic is, all right, you can do anything in 2 weeks. I'm under this proponent, you can do anything in 2 weeks, but it's not going to maybe be good, or it may not tie to an overall vision, right? Goal setting, quarterly, yearly, changed my perspective on how I would build a startup entirely.
I love that.
Yeah.
With my experience, startups that are trying to do more all the time are less productive and effective than the startups trying to do less. So that was a big shift for me a few years back, joining a startup early, where we prioritized everything and we were trying to do the least amount possible. Like you said, just 2 things. Each team member is responsible for 2 things. Or could we get to just one thing we're responsible for that will totally transform the company? Let's focus on that. And you end up making way more progress than the people who are trying to get, 10 more points of velocity accomplished or whatever, right? Do less and you'll get a lot farther.
Right. And I think we were just focusing on putting our foot in front of the other, where sometimes you got to be like, all right, if we're walking forward, where are we walking? You know, should we hit a goal? And I'm not saying that we didn't do that. It was just it felt like it in the moment that we were just trying to make this month's rent and trying to make this sale happen. Right. So yeah, I think if we can figure out a way to train that in school if you were to have a startup class, I feel like that's so key, because everybody learns how to do a problem interview, how to get started, but nobody knows how to do the business building part, I think, or it's really difficult to learn the business building part when you haven't done it before. So yeah, I guess like the lean entrepreneur, right? You read these books about startups and they're never talking about set your quarterly goals, and it sounds too corporate, but it works, I guess. So something I learned.
Maybe you don't have an answer for this, or maybe it's too much for you to share, but actually I want to hop back to Ringcam for a moment. Is there anything about that experience, looking back, that makes you sad?
Ooh. What's the saddest part? I think, so like the relationship aspect, right? So I had my friends started this with me, right? So I think the saddest part of all this was we needed a break from each other. Mm-hmm. And we still, it's just the relationship changed when nearing the end, when we all were just like, why are we still doing this? And there's this like air in the room that sticks with you. It was like a year of just, we haven't grown. Somebody said some startups like cockroach around, they just live. They live around. You could launch a nuke at them, but they're still going to make sales. We were there. So I think that's, I think I'm trying to think of a specific example, but.
Well, were you guys living together too?
We were. It sounded fun. We were living upstairs and then working downstairs.
So it was all Ringcam all the time, basically. You just couldn't escape.
It was. And you were trying to take a break from it. And then your buddy's down there grinding and you're like, oh man, I just need a break from this. Right. And I think that kind of weighs on me. I think the worst part is you look back and you're like, the employees that we hired, sometimes a lot of them made more money than we did coming out of it. Some of them were making, like our landlord, she made the most money out of highest paid employee, So I think that's what sucked the most was we had these audacious goals. People were selling this dream to us too. Like, you could do this. This is amazing. How did I not think of this? Right. And then we did it. We did the whole thing. We went to Shark Tank, didn't go on I don't know if you know, I went on Shark Tank, pitched to Mark Cuban and all them, and they never aired it. You're like, what? So we did it all. And it's just crazy how you put so much of yourself into this. It was a part of, I think it was also part of my identity in this space was you're the Ringcam guy. People took pictures with me, Bryce, at Start Garden. Like, I'm like, what? I'm not that famous, right? But it's like kind of weird how that you become like this hype guy, right? Like everybody's like, they're living through you a little bit, and you did enough to make it work, but it wasn't the unicorn that people imagine. I think that's what's sad is you kind of the dream dies.
Do you feel like being a startup guy and being an entrepreneur was glorified more so? Like before you got into it, you had these rose-colored glasses about what it was, and
oh yeah, totally. We thought that we were gonna make it big, and we were gonna be the example for bootstrapping startups and all that. And that's the thing too. We didn't know how to raise money. We had no idea. We kept asking ourselves in our extended network, how do we raise money? Should we raise money? What's that look like? And nobody could help us, or nobody knew how to. And I think if we had gotten that investment, which that's what's a bummer is I look back, I'm like, damn, if we had a couple things might have taken us off. And it makes me think I could still start this up again. It's like, if I were to reboot RingCam, I could probably do it in 3 months, way less effort, and make way more money, So
yeah, the wisdom you gain over the years is invaluable. I think about that too all the time with my first startup. I was like, I could rebuild it in a day. Yeah, no problem.
What was your first startup, Bryce?
Well, my first tech startup was a golf software company called HC Golf. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, the premise was you take a video of your swing, you upload it, and a real coach will give you feedback in real time, real quick. So shank your drive on the first hole, fix it by the 9th hole. It's kind of the rub on it. So
sounds great.
Yeah, but I overcomplicated it. Okay. I thought so at the time. My idols were like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and like these tech entrepreneurs who had thousands of employees and all that. And, I was young. And so I thought that it had to be like Uber. It had to be something huge or else it wasn't worth doing, because I wanted to be one of those big guys. I wanted to be a billionaire. I want That's what I thought when I was, when I was 22, 23. So, the way I was building the product was just with blinders on to what the market wanted. So I had this vision of this Uberification of the golf industry where golfers and instructors are connecting in real time. You're getting this feedback and everyone's getting better, and it's transactional, or you can build a relationship with a coach if you wanted, whatever. Like I had all these delusions about what it could be, and I'm pushing it. And then at some point I realized that if this was going to be successful, all I needed to do was take 1 or 2 instructors, put them on payroll, have them sit behind a computer and just wait for things to come in and respond in 24 hours. The golfers didn't need real-time feedback. The instructors didn't care enough to be available in real time either. The real-time thing caused a lot of friction, especially when you're trying to gigify it. And so I could have just kept it simple. I should have just been a golf instructor school that was online, and then, cash flowed it, add a little bit of put a pretty front door on it. So it has a nice app so people could get the app experience and they feel like they have a coach in their pocket. Yeah. But it didn't have to be real time,
So I wonder do you think the timing of that app was a little, because it sounds like that was your first startup, that was 10 years ago, right? Maybe? Or?
Yeah. So
I feel like now it would make maybe more sense, but it could. Yeah. Not that you want to start another.
I think, and there's other companies that have tried, but I still think it's overcomplication to go for the gig economy. I think the gig economy helps when you reach a certain scale, or if you need to be geographically dispersed. How am I going to build a workforce in 100 different cities? Yeah. Gig economy makes sense. But I didn't need a geographic presence for that app. So,
I see. That's where you got, and you made it overcomplicated is what you said?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I had this vision for what it was supposed to be, and I wasn't listening to the signals around me. And so when I got to the point, however many months in, where I realized, Uber for golf is not the way for this to be successful, I ended up shutting it down because it's I'm not going to become that billionaire doing this thing. Yeah. So I'm going to go find the other thing that will make me a billionaire. fast forward and I realized, oh, I don't want to be like those guys at all.
Right.
So,
You see, I think that's also something that changed me as a parent. I'm like, do I really want to be these billionaire guys? Because you see how they live their lives. I'd rather be the one shot. Like, all right, let me make a couple million, sell it. Nobody remembers me. Like the glitter card thing. Remember that came out? There's some glitter card that some guy made $500,000 on, and he's probably happy. That's kind of my shift, at least right now, and what I'm playing in is like, how do I make like a quick little 500K, sell it to somebody, startup? And selling a business is not easy either. So I'm realizing that too. It's maybe not that either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm wondering too, I think I overcomplicate stuff too. I think there's something about tech entrepreneurs that we're like, we can do it. We can build the Uber version, right? And so then we get caught up in it and we lose sight of our customer, our user, right? You know?
Right. Well, I think that's why we're drawn to tech entrepreneurship, is because it's supposed to be this difficult thing that no one can figure out except for us, right?
Yes.
Like, because otherwise, why not just start a plumbing company with good marketing, and you'll be wildly rich because everyone needs a plumber,
Right.
But instead, we're like, oh, what if I layer this and that on top of it, and it's
I know.
We shoot ourselves in the feet sometimes when we do some of those things. So, but I think that realization that you're talking about, where like, I don't want to have 1,000 employees. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be famous like those people. It's like, some of these, I have a couple mentors who made $10 million and no one knows about them. And they've got a nice house. They can take care of their family, total freedom to work on any project they want at any time. It's like, oh, they're good.
That's what I want, right? Yeah. The wholesome entrepreneur, right? Like, that's the dream now, I feel like, that's my perspective shift, where I wanted to kind of be that. When I was doing BRYNK, I'm like, I'll make $100 million someday. Like, that's what's coming out. And the rose-colored glasses is strong.
Man, I literally have rose-colored glasses in my car. I thought about bringing them in just so we could have a segment where we just wear rose-colored glasses and talk about things, and then we have to take them off and talk about all the pitfalls with it. But I want to get your take on something else. So I'm curious if you would agree with this trend or not. So I don't know if it's because I'm getting older and so I'm removed from the population, or if this is a real shift in the market, but I'm finding fewer and fewer 22-year-olds to 25-year-olds who are going out there and trying to start tech startups. Like those used to be the best and brightest. They were coming up with all the good ideas. They were pushing the limits. But now I'm seeing a lot more people who are 40s and up, who are looking at second career, looking to change things up. So I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm curious if you are seeing that trend as well, and if so, why do you think that's happening?
Oh man, I have it's a little bit of I'll say this, like, I feel like Gen Z's got a different perspective on capitalism entirely. And we as millennials saw these tech startups come out and we're like, we just want to be a part of this. I think Gen Z's got a disdain for trying to make a bunch of money. They've seen how it hurts, I guess, millennials, right? Like trying to go out and do and start those things. So they're more of I feel like they're going to make some of the best they're going to be the best creatives. We're going to hear the best music, see the best art. I think their tech startup is being the best artist, right? Maybe even the best YouTuber, right? That's like the 22, maybe the 20. I'm making a broad assumption here, but I was just talking to somebody too. I guess people, 22-year-olds or the generation younger than us, we're so old now. They don't care about like having a car. They don't want a license. They don't want to have that responsibility. Their Uber driver has that responsibility, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just a different way to look at life, just like we looked at life differently. So yeah, I don't know why maybe it's just they know how hard it is. And maybe they know that technology is kind of bad. I think they have that perspective too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like social media is not, they participate in it in a communication way, but maybe they don't like how I guess millennials have puffed up themselves or like creating these fake Instagram. They're really authentic now. They don't want to see any of they don't like rose colored glasses, you know? So
Yeah, I think
it's
our
like-
generation was all about the Instagram filters, and you see now it's more just like DMs between people, and just authentic, silly moments is winning out. But
yeah.
I'm curious if you agree with this take. So I think that people in our generation were viewing tech entrepreneurship as a fast path to freedom, and the next generation have more paths to freedom that are a lot quicker and in some ways not as hard. So I think about when I did my first startup, I was on the heels of working for a company where they said, you'll never be able to work remote. You'll never be able to make that amount of money that you say you want to make. You'll never be able to do all these things. I was like, well, I want freedom. And I viewed Zuckerberg and Gates as being the most free people in the world. I know they're not free now, but I equate it to freedom, and money is freedom and all that. So I think now, if you're a 22-year-old entering into the workforce, you can live anywhere, work anywhere. And so that's immediately more freedom.
Yeah.
You can be a creator, and that's a viable path too.
Yeah.
Right. You can express yourself in that way. You don't have to build a product or build a service. You can just be yourself and build a brand that way. So I think there's just more options for freedom. And I agree with what you said, less prioritization on some of the material things. And so I think it's shifting. And also some of those material things are more out of reach. If you're a 22-year-old now, houses are more expensive, cars are more expensive. All those things are tough to get. So that's kind of my take on it. I just don't think tech entrepreneurship specifically is the best path for a lot of 22-year-olds to 25-year-olds right now.
Totally. And I think you had said that 40 somethings now are getting into entrepreneurship, like tech entrepreneurship. I mean, that would be a great time to, because you got all this experience, you know how things operate and work, like start up, you've probably got a little bit of stability. You know how to live your life if you were to cut back, let's say. And they probably are way motivated to figure it out. I totally agree that, all right, sorry. There's like a cricket.
Did Evan just like crickets?
Did you not like what I was saying, Evan? The computer didn't like what I was saying.
I didn't touch it. That's crazy.
He's got this new AI mixer over there.
That's what I need to amp it up.
Wow.
That was
Okay,
hilarious. Sorry,
let's get our next guest in here.
I don't even remember what I was saying, but that was so funny.
It's very good. We're just talking about freedom and then older. Yeah.
But yeah, I was all about, you're totally right on. Like, that's totally what I was thinking. 22, if I just made $500,000, I could buy my house, live happy, right? I'm still on that train. I'm like, how do I get to my first $500,000 in home equity? Because, dude, homes are expensive. They take up half your income sometimes, right? Or a third of it. So I'm like, get me out of that. Yeah. So,
well, when I look at you, and tell me if you look at it differently, but what I've noticed over the last 10 years that I've known you, has it been 10 years? How long? Probably
something like that. I don't know when Surge kind of started up, I think, and is when I started to hang out with you, right?
Okay. So probably 7-8 years, I think.
Yeah.
Around then. Because I think we crossed paths when you were still around Hope and doing things there. So
okay.
But
probably.
Anyways, I've known you for a while, known you through these transformative years of starting your family and all that. I have noticed you heading towards freedom a lot more. You seem to be happy when you can go work from somewhere else for 2 weeks or a month. I think you just did that. I think you were just in another state for a month.
So Vermont, for a couple weeks. Yeah.
I think that brings you a lot of joy. And, now I don't like that when you do those things, because I notice that you have a less of an itch to go start your own thing or go build something.
Yeah.
I don't hear from you when you're
gone.
I know. When you are trapped here and you're grinding on things, that's when you're like, I got this idea. What do you think about this? So I feel like that's, scratching the same itch somehow.
It's funny. I've been doing that now, like the full remote thing for a long 4 or 5 years. And so really fun. Go somewhere, work anywhere. But it kind of, to your point, I miss out on the community, right? So I binge my community and then I binge on vacation, work-life balance, right? And I'm recognizing that it's good and I do get a lot of joy from it. But I think after a few years of doing it, kind of like, I want something more that's inconsistent. I think that's what's changing in me is I like the sporadicness of life. But next thing for me is like a little bit of this stability. I think as a 32-year-old, it's like, all right, I'm approaching a midlife crisis somewhere, right? Maybe not right now, but I want to have something that I'm excited about every day where while I am happy generally and content, I just need I need the hot sauce to life, And that's where I talk to you. Like I come back and I'm like, oh, West Michigan, the mildest, don't put pepper or salt on my dinner kind of place. So yeah, the startup world brings the spice that I need in my life.
Did you know that restaurants literally change their recipes when they come to West Michigan so that they are less spicy?
It makes complete sense, dude. Like, extra hot. And you're like, they just put red pepper flakes on it. And like, that's it. Oh, geez.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a few minutes left, and I want to talk about your latest endeavor, podcast, Spitball.
Spitball. Yes.
So give me the 30-second rub on what that is.
So, Spitball, three dudes, me included, just talk about our startup ideas. We have a lot of them going on but we're parents now. We've realized that all the startup ideas that we've had in our book, in our pocket are going to sit there. And they're probably going to sit there for a long time. And I know that in my lifetime, I won't be able to do all these startups. And actually, all your ideas have a time limit before somebody else thinks about it, somebody launches it or whatever. So Spitball is way different of a podcast than your typical entrepreneurship podcasts, which are, a little demoralizing sometimes when you listen to them. You're like, wow, that guy really worked hard to get to where he's at. And he had a really creative solution. I've listened to all of them and I wanted to create a junk food podcast for startups that are just create a little bit of, I could think of something better, inspire them in the way that I inspire people, which is, I guess, letting them think that they have an idea, like getting really smart people to think about ideas and making them think differently, right? We're three dudes with very little market validation of any of our ideas. So I think it's just really entertaining to listen to some people talk about their ideas, passionate about it, knowing they're never going to start inspires people to think of their own ideas. Spitball, we invite guests all the time. We're trying to really make this thing more fun, and it is fun right now. So I think that's why we like it.
Yeah. It is fun. I've listened to it. I've listened to 2 episodes.
Oh yeah.
And
that's right.
So I'll first give you all my props, then I'll give some of my criticism if you're open to it.
I am all about feedback, as an entrepreneur myself. So
structurally, I think it's very sound. Like I like how you move through 3 ideas. Each of you is bringing an idea to the table. You are cutting clear cuts from one idea to the next idea. Even just having the little jingle in between, I think is really great. I think the chemistry of the 3 of you is fantastic. I didn't listen to the first episode. I jumped in at episode 3, and I think Leo kicked it off. And Leo just sounds right.
I know.
Like
he's so good at it.
Does Leo have another podcast or anything he's doing?
This is his first one of many, I'm sure. This is his practice podcast.
He's a natural, so he just drew me in. But I really like it, and I think my favorite part about it is that you are exposing that ideas are not precious. That we all have ideas, and we should put them out there in the world. We should beat them up, have them be beat up by our best friends and also strangers, and they're going to get better. So every idea you guys have thrown out on the episodes, another person's punching it up or punching it down, and you figure out where the holes are in it, and it might totally transform. I notice you like to just totally transform the idea. So,
I like to do the left turns.
Yeah.
Mix it up, you know?
Yeah. So I really like that because I think entrepreneurs, first time founders especially, they think they only have one idea and they need to just hold on to it and they strangle it to death instead of just letting it be out in the world and seeing if people want it.
And that's the difference between an entrepreneur and a business person, I guess, or like an idea is an entrepreneur has many and you kind of are finding opportunity to make that one. You have a book of 100, you'll find an opportunity that makes it really easy to launch that one. And if you like it enough, you launch it, right? And that's kind of what, you know, I have a lot of dating app ideas in my podcast and I'm never going to launch one because I'm a married man. I just don't want to be involved with that, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you chew on those ideas. We want people to come on this podcast and share their ideas because I know from my experience, and I've heard, and I'm sure you have too, a lot of ideas people have talked to you about, and none of them will take hold. Even if you tell people, nobody may even start it, right? It's your brilliant idea. So again, it is a passion of mine to have people talk about their ideas because it gets them excited to become entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And they may not know it yet. So, yeah.
I love it. An interesting dynamic, and I don't know if this is going to be good or bad for the show, is that when you bring up an idea that I think is inherently bad, then I was tempted to tune out, or I was just getting frustrated as I was listening to it. I'm like, this is just a bad idea. You guys are missing the mark. I felt this urge to just yell at, like I was listening to it in the car. I was like, I just wanted to yell at my car speakers, like, no, you're missing the point. And it's
good. That's a reaction we kind of, but keep going.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say, so I think, the downside of that is if people just tune out, they're like, these guys have bad ideas, I'm out. But you bring on guests and it can mix it up. But the good side is I think that if you can somehow include those people's feedback and you can make it an interactive thing, I think then you can get some really cool discourse with the community where you have, and these ideas will just become more robust and you'll have engagement. Because I think, let people say, I think the idea is dumb, and let someone else say, I think the idea is good, and let the battle of ideas happen. I think it'd be cool.
That has been so we've launched 4 episodes and that's a constant feedback right now. We are like the ringing true is we don't engage with our audience. And a lot of people are like, well, that idea already exists. Right. But we also are like, why doesn't it? Like we should be tapping into that 100%. And part of me thinks that if we maybe live streamed it a little bit or got more feedback live or have somebody in the room that's fact checking, right? Or being the voice of the audience, that's something that will, I think, put us over the edge and make it a really entertaining podcast. And it's like, because I know I just did a podcast yesterday and I'm like, this is my worst idea so far. And I'm like, if I were to listen to my podcast on this idea, how do I skip ahead? Right? I think a lot of people are like, I'll skip to the good parts. And so I completely agree. Yeah. I don't know a way to do that is part of my question. I'd love to pick your brain on that.
We can spitball that.
Yes.
But before spitballing that, before it slips my mind. Leo led off with an awesome idea in episode 3. I guess I can give it away because it's in the title, but it's, in short, it's like a crowdsourced marketplace for products that have been sponsored or that have appeared on podcasts. And there's promo codes for each of those podcasts, for each of those products. And this marketplace would provide a way for you to support both the products you love, but also the creators you love. And I was like, wow, that is an interesting idea. I'd love to see where this goes. And you guys punched it up and I thought it was awesome. And then some other ideas were thrown out. And then it's like, I didn't like those other ideas as much, but it's just interesting going through. But I think it's fine. The way you structure the episode, it's really easy to just hop forward. If you're like, I don't really want to listen to this, you can just go right to the next topic.
See, and I'm wondering if we do too many ideas, like maybe it would be easier for the user to like, all right, I'm just going to skip this idea, go to the next episode. And so part of us thinks we could stretch out an idea, but, and do a little bit more of the, let's go Google this segment, right? We're going to Google and see what people are doing. And for 10 minutes, we do that and then talk about it and then find ways to punch it up, right? Or shape it, right? Because an idea starts raw and you got to polish it, right? So
I have seen a lot of podcasters experimenting with shorter form podcasts, sub 5-minute podcasts, and that might be interesting because people could just binge through these ideas. But I think that the
cool.
challenge to that, or just the flip side of that coin is, I think people will see that it's not the original idea that's worth listening to. It's hearing the feedback from the others and hearing how it transforms. That is really interesting. Like that's the journey that I think is powerful about it. Because otherwise, you're just
trying to
it's
build
just
a
like
business,
a
right?
list of ideas.
Yeah.
And that's lame, I think.
Right.
But what you are allowing someone to say their idea, and then two other people hear it and say, here's what I heard. And the first person says, no, that's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
And then you have to try to get on the same page. And then you get on the same page. And then you say, now what if it was this? And what if it was that? And I think that's the powerful part.
Right. People just need to talk about their ideas. It's so close and personal to them. At least everybody's first one is, because it's like sharing a piece of you for some reason. But once you give that up and you just start sharing ideas, I don't know. It just changes the way you look at ideas entirely. So yeah, I'm glad you liked the punching up part, because I was a little worried that it was just too positive, and maybe it still is. I think it would be good to have a little bit of back to reality, because I think people that are listening are in a reality situation. So,
well, I think you guys could adopt roles too.
Yeah.
Because there could be one of you that's like, all right, I'm going to punch it up. And then someone else, I'm going to punch it down, and we'll get to it. Because there was some of that where you guys were like, oh, that's a good idea. I really like that. And I didn't care for that too much. But also in that setting, it's like, this is a brainstorming setting.
Right.
There are no bad ideas. Just throw ideas out there, see what happens. So maybe something to experiment with, because I do thinking the two-way interactivity is going to be awesome for you guys.
Yeah.
But maybe a stepping stone that doesn't require as much production effort would be just every so often have a recap episode where you say, we're going to look at our previous ideas, which ones you guys love the most, which ones you hated, and get your feedback and how you would punch it up, and just react to them, and then you guys process it. So
I think that's what we're going to have to go to, because we're running out of ideas, I think, to some extent. But you listening to the podcast makes me think of 3 more ideas. So, but yeah, I think that's something that we got to start to do. So it's funny how we started the podcast and now we're already excited about the next version of this. So I'm glad. It's great to hear the feedback too, because it's not that it sounds terrible. People are just excited to provide feedback, and I'm really excited to try it that way. Yeah. So yeah, those are great.
I think it's awesome. Yeah. So I hope you keep going with it. I'll keep listening to it. When you get the two-way interactivity going, let me know. So I'd love to participate.
Thanks, Bryce. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's all I've got. Is there anything else that you want to tell the world today?
Start a business, as big or as small, as little as you can. It's empowering, it's fun, it's different, it's a spice of life, and listen to Spitball.show. Go to there and follow on all your favorite podcasts. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you, Bryce.
All right.